Welcome everybody, my name is Sebastian Zösch, I'm the CEO of VEBU, and in this session we are going to discuss the question, is our future plant-based? We are going to discuss with our future, I'll often refer to the word veggie, and with this I mean usually that it includes as well as vegans, also vegetarians and flexitarians. And of course veggie as a whole movement is thriving, you know, like people are going more flexitarian, people are going more vegetarian, and above all, more and more people are going vegan. Now, I was wondering actually specifically about vegetarian and vegan. I mean, we all have kind of the sense that veganism is, you know, taking a bit of the lead, but I wanted to have some more numbers, and so I was asking Google how actually the two terms vegetarian and vegan in Germany, I was doing it for Germany, actually have been looked up on Google over the last years. So on this slide you can see it starting with the year 2005. You can see that red, which is the search for vegetarian, has been looked up on Google twice as often as the word vegan. But then over the year, if you do an analysis, and that's good, Google can do that. Oh, it doesn't show here, okay. You can see that it has, you know, vegan has been catching up to the year 2009, and then it has been a little bit in parallel, and starting at 2011 and especially 2012, veganism has really, or vegan, the term vegan according to Google searches, has really taken off and is now really way beyond vegetarian. So I think we can strongly assess, I mean, even vegetarian, as you see, is going up, that veggie or the vegan movement is thriving. But now the big question comes, is this actually a short-term hype, you know, like a trend that's going to be gone in a few months or maybe a few years, or is this actually a sustainable development? And to answer that question, it makes sense to look at how other movements or other trends are often going. And there you can see that often, you know, some ideas or trends, they can be all different kinds of things. I'll come to that in a minute. They develop, I don't know, sometimes 10 years, 100 years, 1,000 years, they somehow start and then they just wobble along. And then in one point in time, they reach a critical mass, like a so-called tipping point, and then they really go up, but then there are often two kind of ways. For example, it can, you know, as fast as it went up, it can go down again. And it's one example, if you look, for example, at communism, at least in the Western world, you know, there was a time where it was like more popular, but then it went down again. And now most countries in the world are not communist. But then there are other ideas which actually take a different turn and who go up like that. And this is, can anybody guess what I'm referring to here? Yeah, well, it's also with voting. It's the, you know, it's the right to vote for women, and of course there was, I mean, the idea has been around, like, you know, for decades, and you know that people were suggesting, well, maybe women should vote too, but nothing really happened. And then at one point in time, you know, people got the right to vote, and it's still not accepted in every country, but more and more countries actually adopted that practice, and it's hard to imagine that that will ever go down again. So I mean, to imagine that, I don't know, in Germany or in the States, women will lose their right to vote is kind of like hard to imagine. So that's an idea that certainly has reached or is close to reaching 100% of the world and probably is going here to stay. And now if you look at the vegetarian and vegan movement, this also has been around for hundreds and hundreds of years. I guess you know that even like the old Greek, they already talked about being vegetarian. And then as we see now, so this has been moving along. So in this way, and now we have, a few years ago, we reached some kind of critical mass, at least in Germany, you know, a lot of supermarkets have opened up, and I'll come to that later. But of course the big question is it maybe just a short-term hype and will go down again, or is this really a movement that's going to be here to stay? And in order to assess the question, it makes sense to look back a few years and look how it all started. And when you look at the reasons why that spoke against being vegetarian or vegan, and the reasons to be vegetarian or vegan, it was mainly, it looked a bit like this. So you had on the side against vegetarian or vegan, you had health concerns, the norm, you know, it was not standard, like, you know, the vast majority, or like more than 99%, have not been vegetarian or vegan. It was often more expensive, the products have not been available, and they did not taste any good, you know, so that's of course what you always hear. And on the, you know, promoting vegetarian or vegan lifestyle was for a long time, I mean, besides maybe religious reasons, or but it was mainly like an issue of animal ethics, but it was not very grounded. That's why it's, you know, it's only a small symbol. But this has changed over the last year. Like if you look back the last 20 years, or well, a little more now, for example, with if you look at the books that have been published, Peter Singer's Animal Liberation book came out exactly 40 years ago. So this was the start of like the, you know, putting animal rights on a philosophical map, and then other journalists like joined just in a few years ago. Jonathan Safran Foer as a big publisher, then a religious writer wrote about the topic. That's a German book from a famous journalist. That's another one from another scientist, another famous journalist, and yeah, psychologists like Melanie Joy also took up the topic, and mainstream media. So the whole point of, or the whole argument of animal ethics has become more and more important over the last years, and has been more grounded in philosophy, in sociology, in psychology, so and in literature. So that argument that was really tiny in the beginning has over the last years has expanded. So more and more choosing that reason. But of course, that has not been the only reason. I mean, if you look at a bigger scale, there have been other reasons. And for example, one topic that was not around 20 years ago was climate change. You know, nobody cared about climate change 20 years ago, but recent studies that have been done, I mean, this is, I guess most of you guys are familiar. We did a study at VEBU together with Greenpeace to assess the impact of climate change according to different diets and different meats and meat substitutes. And here you can see that's ground meat. That's the greenhouse gases in ground meat in organic compared with organic meat. You know, you see there's not a big of difference between conventional and organic meat. But if you look, for example, like at seitan, then you can see that it really, or compared with tofu or GVP, that the CO2 emissions are much better. And we did some calculation in Germany alone. If you replaced all the real meat, or like, you know, animal meat with so-called vegan meat, you would save the equivalent of 25 to 30 million cars, which is of course quite a lot. So, and climate change is going to stick around. You know, it's not a topic that's just like, you know, this month or, you know, the next 2 years. This is a topic that will follow us over the next decades. It's always going to be on the agenda. So this is definitely something that hasn't been there before, but now it's a big argument that's speaking for the pro-vegan side. Another argument that has not been as strong in before is the argument of world hunger. As you might know, roughly or close to 1 billion people in the whole world suffer from malnutrition. Many of them die of malnutrition. The world population grows each year by about 80 million people. So, you know, there are more and more people that we have to feed. So the problem in some ways is actually getting more and more severe. And 1/3 of all the grain is actually fed at the moment to farmed animals. And, you know, even like World Nutrition Organizations are catching up on that and saying, well, you know, we shouldn't be doing that. It can't be that, you know, so many people go hungry, and there are more and more that we need to feed, and at the same time we are so-called, you know, wasting most of our resources feeding them to animals. You don't know how inefficient that is. So of course that's a problem that's, you know, going to become more severe in the future. That has already been severe. So this is another topic that's coming on the pro-vegan side. Then another thing that hasn't been around 30 years ago are scandals. When was like the big, or the first big meat scandal, so to speak? Anybody? Like, it was mad cow disease, you know, that really put like the whole thing like on a huge scale on the agenda, and I believe it was in the early 90s. So about roughly like 25 years ago, and ever since in Germany and probably many other countries as well, there have been many other scandals. You know, there was, pig and birds flu, and in Germany they found some horse meat in a lasagna, and that's bird flu. Or they found really old meat to make vegan meats, to make burgers they found, and or some food poisoning within animal products, and it's usually always actually animal products. I mean, there have been very few scandals ever involving non meaty or animal products, and even if vegetables were involved, it was mainly often that they were contaminated by farmed animals that actually somehow used to put their excrements on the vegetables or something like that. So that's of course another problem that vegan diet can resolve, and that's speaking in favor of a vegetarian, or of course even better, a vegan diet. So you see there are more and more arguments piling up on the right side, and already starting to balance it out. So let's take a look on the left side, because we said in the beginning that's how it started, but let's take a closer look if that actually changed. And if you look at health, there have been many concerns several decades ago, and if you went vegetarian, people would always say, oh my God, how can you survive being vegetarian, and now it's vegan. And for example, in Germany, the situations like that, I mean, you can, if you can cite any different, at the ADA, for example, the American Dietetic Association, they are having a position paper that has become more and more vegetarian friendly. And here in Germany, that's like the president of the nutritional, of the Association for Nutritional Physicians. And he has been quoted that a vegetarian or even a vegan diet can basically be recommended without any restrictions, because it has health, it leads to better health and a longer life. And that's kind of like the Pope in Germany about the nutritionists or nutritional physicians. There's also VegMed, which is a conference that VEBU created together with Charité, one of the leading hospitals, and which has been hugely successful. More and more people and more doctors obviously are interested in that. And even, I mean, if you don't want to read all the studies, even on a more graspable and more anecdotal basis, who knows that guy? He's very famous in Germany. His name is Attila Hildmann. He's a famous chef. He used to be a meat eater. He was quite obese, and then he changed because his dad died of a heart attack. He decided to switch to a vegan diet, and 10 years later he looked like that on a vegan diet, and he's promoting veganism and the health benefits in Germany on a large scale. He has sold more than 1 million books, and of course is making sure that everybody knows that veganism is not only good for the animals but also good for health. So coming back to our scale, one can argue that health, even though maybe not for everybody yet, it's not like that everybody thinks, oh, vegan is definitely healthier, at least not in Europe, but it's already more balanced. So it's not like, oh, it's totally not possible, or there might be maybe a few domains where nutritionists say, well, but for babies maybe vegan nutrition is not the right thing, but generally for a grown adult they already agree that it can be very healthy. Let's look at the norms, and to look at the norms, what we did at VEBU, we looked at the vegan cookbooks that have been published in Germany in the last years, and we went back like 5 years and looked, starting in 2010, how many vegan cookbooks have been published. And we found that in the whole year of 2010, 3 vegan cookbooks were published. Actually, when I started being vegan, there was not a single vegan cookbook out there, at least not on the German market. So, but in 2010, it was at least already 3, and then we looked up how much it was the next year, and from one year to the other, it already turned out to be 12 books. Then we looked at the next year, 2012, and suddenly there were 25 vegan books. And just to remember, these are just the books that came out that very year. So the other books that came out the year before, you could of course still buy them, so you actually have to add them up. So, but this were just the new books, and then we were thinking, well, maybe it's kind of enough. I mean, maybe the market is saturated. But then in 2013, it was actually close to 50 books. And at least then my colleagues said, well, now every publisher, I mean, who is going to read all these books? I mean, how many books do they need? And so we thought, well, probably 2014 it might actually go down, but for 2014 looked like this. Yeah, feel free to clap. Yeah, because this is really, I mean, you can see, I mean, all these authors, every book, of course, has been published by at least one author, you know, really spreading the message. Many of them have been sold like 100,000 times, and, you know, I think I've heard that last year in Austria, a vegan cookbook was the most popular Christmas present. Like, of all Christmas presents, a vegan cookbook. So that's pretty amazing. So, and that's telling us something, that the norms are shifting, and that's what I've been telling here. So the norms, of course, still the majority eats meat, but you can also see there is already a movement to the right side. Let's come to prices. You know, years ago, 10 years ago, when I was vegan and I wanted to buy a liter of soy milk, I had to pay like more than €2. I had to go to a special store, and now you can buy a liter of soy milk for like less than 90 cents, which is, well, still, yeah, which is still more expensive than, you know, if you buy factory farmed milk, but it already, you know, it's getting closer and closer. And in Germany we have this special situation that actually soy milk is taxed more than regular than cow's milk, and of course we as VEBU, we are lobbying to change that law, and if that is changing, then, you know, soy milk is going to be cheaper again. And also when it comes to vegan meats, we did the calculation. If you just take ground meat, and that's about 20% in Germany of the meat is consumed in the form of ground meat, and for ground meat it's actually really easy to replace it with a vegan TVP, because, you know, like if you have a spaghetti, you really don't taste the difference. They actually have been studied that roughly 90% are not able to taste the difference. And we calculated how much money can actually be saved, and a family of 4 in Germany would save €140 each year. And the whole of Germany, if everybody switched just ground meat, not nothing else, just ground meat to vegan meats, you would save a total of, yeah, almost €3 billion every year. And of course, like, this message still needs to be spread, but it's already showing that price is in many cases not so much an argument against a vegan diet. So while it might not be cheaper yet to live on a vegan diet, or not a whole lot, or at least depending on how well you eat, it's already, you know, not a real counter argument. So which arguments are left? So we have availability and taste. Let's look at the last two. For one indicator to look at the availability is the turnover that's generated with the different kinds of meats. And here we have veggie alternative. We have, you know, very reliable statistics in Germany how much you know, vegetarian alternatives have been sold. That's the turnover that's 20 million euros, which is, you know, not a whole lot, but starting in 2008, if you look it up, it's actually been growing by, you know, roughly 30%, or a little less, sometimes a little more, each year. And in 2014, actually, we have reached over 100 million of turnover, increasing by another 30%. So this makes it clear that availability is becoming better and better. I mean, you probably already know that in supermarket it's more available. I mean, you know, the different stocks, it's more and more being stocked up. So availability, of course, it's not the case that it's more that it's easier to find vegan foods than regular meat, but it's already the counter argument is becoming less and less. And last but not least, taste. You know, one big counter argument, but also here, you know, the products have becoming tastier, the recipes have becoming better, the alternatives that have been developed, and the foods that are being offered in restaurants and in other gastronomical institutions have improved tremendously. So while most people still might not say, well, I actually like, you know, vegan better, also like the counter argument in society has become less and less because the food just tastes better and better. So you can see the weight has been shifting quite a lot, and there's actually more happening on this side. And what's coming on top now is that it's becoming more and more of an attractive lifestyle. So more and more celebrities, you know, starting with, you know, Bill Clinton, or actors, singers, sportsmen, and that's Attila, like, are choosing a vegan lifestyle, and that's another argument that's coming on top of the pro-veggie side. And now you might think, okay, maybe, you know, I mean, we have seen how the arguments moved on this side. Maybe some of them would actually be moving back. I mean, we've seen for most of them, I mean, once something is more available and once something, you know that it's healthy, you know that's probably not going to change. But one of the biggest arguments that it's not going to change, that it's actually becoming a social movement. There are, in Germany and in all around the world, there are more and more organizations popping up, pushing forward the vegan agenda, or existing organizations that were maybe just promoting animal welfare now also shift towards also promoting a vegan lifestyle. So it's really becoming a social movement. Also, people are getting more organized. I mean, I can just speak for my organization. You can see we have been around for many, many years, but like many years we just grew very steadily. But also like the last year we saw some really steep incline in people joining our organization, wanting to be part of it, wanting to push the vegan agenda. We of course have a variety of projects we are running. So in every argument, whether it's animal welfare, or it's like animal protection, health, taste, we are pushing forward and making sure that everybody knows that veganism is the best option. So last but not least, last argument, it's becoming a social movement. So as you can see, there are more and more arguments being in favor of veganism, and they're here to stay, and they're actually gaining weight, while the counter arguments against a vegan lifestyle are becoming less and less. And so coming back to our original question, if actually the vegan movement is, you know, just something that's modern now and is going to be disappear in the future or not, I strongly believe that we will actually have this kind of development. And to answer our initial question, our future is plant-based. Thank you.